the butter of the peanut. Thank you. Hey, Tyler's running my arms, I get them going. Carrie wants me to go home because I don't feel good. I'm like nauseous and she's all scared of the stomach flu. So I can put in a sub like easily, or if you want to pay for a half day, you just want to do the afternoon class. It's either way. I mean, so you can see what we do here and decide if you want to combine it. Alright, peeps. Sorry for those of you who don't have the homework written down. Yo, so again, at this point, hey, it shouldn't take me talking that long for you to figure out that like class is starting. At this point, what two things should I not need to ask you? Like, plan book out and write it down, and graph paper, right? So if you have yet to do those things, you need to kind of, give yourself a little correction of you're not doing what you need to do. I was just in the process of telling Mr. Smith I don't really feel great today. I don't know what's going on, whether it's something I ate or whether I'm coming down with something. So please be nice to me. I can't, thank you. I don't really want to speak up too loud today because the louder you get, kind of the harder it is on your body. But tomorrow, homework's going to be collected. So if you want to avoid the freak out tomorrow, find those 3 assignments right now. It should be pretty easy. They should be in your math binder. Do not turn them in today. I do not want them today. But those 3 should already be done. And then this is 2 nights, and for the sake that you should be getting homeworks done the day that they're assigned, I am collecting that one tomorrow. Now, through grading your tests, I can tell exactly who really did their homework and who only kind of did it. I can tell exactly who did it. Because question 5, where it breaks up the number line into equal segments, and then you have to figure out the missing portion, those were directly on your homework problems. On the back, area of triangles and parallelograms and things like that, those were directly on your homework. And some of you have very little idea, bless you, of what's going on. Now, on the converse, if I spin that to the positive, some of you guys are rocking this stuff, and it's because you've done your homework. A lot of you guys are rocking this stuff. I have a decent amount of masteries. I still need to get the grades in my grade book and in MAP, so I'm not going to give back your test today. But if you're dying to know your grade, you can see me at some point later. Not after class, not after this class, like AO or extension, something like that. I normally give you guys back your tests before I put them in math, but it doesn't really make a difference. So sometimes they'll go in math first, and sometimes you'll get them back first and have an opportunity to correct them. You guys already had 2 days with this test, so I may just go ahead and put them in math. Issue being, so with the Accelerated 7 class, like the Comp 7-8 that is after you guys, I gave them back their tests last week, and once everyone took their tests, right, so I knew wasn't worried about cheating or anything, and I said, hey, if you correct these in the next couple days, I will change your grade in my grade book, and then the grade that goes into MAP will be the good grade, the revised grade. Only 2 people did it. Actually 3, I think, because then I reminded somebody. But I think I gave 10 or so progressings in that class. Of those people, only 3 people remembered to do it because it wasn't in their math. And when you sit down at AR extensions and you check math, and your brain immediately says, my button's green, I had nothing to do, that's kind of dangerous. So if you don't keep a good plan book or a list of here's what I need to revise, and you're going with math as your only frame, that can be problematic. So I might just go ahead and put them in math so that you see them, then we'll get them back.
You're available to come to my office real quick.
So today, 222. Hopefully you brought your dancing shoes. If you don't get that, just let it sink in. A 2-2. Get it the thing you wear when you dance. And we can abbreviate this with just adding rationals. Remember last week we talked about what makes a number a rational number? Who can remind us of how we know a number is rational and why the root of this word here? Joey? The root of the word rational, so guys, you might underline this again. We don't have to define it again, but the root of the word rational is ratio. Let's go ahead and underline ratio to remind us that that means the number can be written as a fraction, like A over B. So this is where people get screwed up. 7/9. Is that a ratio?
No.
Yeah, it is. So this is where people get confused. Fractions are ratios. Fractions are ratios. So remember, we talked about this last week, but I'll make the reminder. There's 3 ways to write these. With the colon, with the verbal, like A to B, and then the fraction, A over B. Now, this is where it's really confusing. I'm not going to lie to you guys. This is really confusing. 7/9 is a rational number, right? It is written as a fraction or as a ratio. It's fine. It's a rational number. However, when I put it to a decimal, it's repeating forever. And that confuses the crap out of people. Because it's a number that has no end, but yet, since I can write it as a fraction, it is a rational number. Now, to confuse you even more, pi is a number that doesn't end. Like I got pi up there on the poster, and it keeps going. Some of it fell down because of the humidity in the building, and I'll get it back up there soon. Pi is not rational. It is an irrational number because it doesn't repeat. There's no pattern. So the reason that we can turn repeating decimals into fractions is there's a pattern that we can figure out. Pi has no discernible pattern. Like we can't figure out what makes, well, we know what makes the numbers. It's a long division that's essentially happening, but there's no pattern that we can recognize. There's no repetition. It's actually kind of this big mystery of like, how is it that this like division makes an endless, non-repeating, not like it's just crazy, right?
How does it keep on growing?
So if you can imagine, and this is going further than we need to real quick, but if you can imagine a circle, a perfect circle, right? So don't say that you made it, but like you walk up to a perfect circle. So you stumble upon like ancient something, I don't know, but there's a perfect circle, right? So this is not a perfect circle, but if you measure around the outside, that's your circumference, because circum means to go around something. So if you've ever heard the term circumnavigate, it means like go around. And if you take that and you divide it by the diameter, diameter is the distance across. So we would take the circumference, divide it by the diameter.
It would be pi.
That's pi. That's how we got pi. So given a perfect circle, if you can with 100% accuracy measure all the way around and then divide it by the distance across, we get very close to pi. Now the closest easy thing, we're way off on a tangent, closest easy thing to relate to pi is 22/7. It's close, but it's not perfect. This gives us the 3.14, but then the digits get a little goofy, but that's close. It's not actually pi, but it's close. Does that make a little bit of sense, Riley? So if you can imagine a circle that would take 22 steps to get around, it would take 7 steps to get across it. That's close to perfect. All right, today, though, we are talking about more addition of those rational numbers. And what we see up here, unfortunately, is mainly, well, not mainly, I guess it's kind of evenly distributed, decimals versus fractions, right? We have a lot of decimals, a few fractions up here. What do we have to do with fractions before we can add or subtract them? Even? Common denominator. Now, with any numbers, whether it be decimals or fractions, what do we want to do before we kind of like start the fight?
Are we on C?
Yeah. I'm kind of making my own entry, but yeah, we started this last week, I believe.
Yeah, no, we did.
So what do we? I'm trying to remind you guys of some things before I tell you to jump back into it. What do we want to do with our numbers? Like so yeah, Ava, let's look at C. So if we go to look at C, I want to write down C, the 6.1, and you might be continuing notes from last week, but if not, we're just writing down new ones. Plus, we put negatives in parentheses to make our life easier.
Oh, so that's not telling you to do it first.
It's not really saying do it first, but it's saying like, hey, look at me. So we don't have to put them in parentheses, but it's a grouping strategy. So when we look at the numbers, we don't think plus minus. Oh, on that topic, somebody brought up with me that their calculator was broken, that it was not working correctly, because it kept giving them syntax error, which is not like, funny enough, there's a thing called syntax in the world, like when you buy cigarettes or beer or things that are bad, the government taxes those on like S-I-N. It's a funny little play on words. S-Y-N, tax error. If you get that on your calculator, you typed the wrong button. Minus is here. Negative is down there. So if we're trying to type negative in our calculator, we got to use the button down there in the parentheses as opposed to the minus. So if you go into your calculator and you type 6.1 plus minus 3.05, it's going to break your calculator. It can't do that. But if you type plus a negative, it's all good. And in your calculator, you don't have to put the parenthesis, but it's better if you do. Well, let's avoid the calculator, right? We're not going to use that right off the bat, at least. If I try to talk about this as like a story problem, right? I got 3 numbers coming to the battle. What do I want to do with my numbers before the battle really starts, Sky? Group them into teams. So we're going to group together like values, positives and negatives. The positive doesn't have anyone to group up with, so he just stays 6.1. But group up your negatives, and then you can just add them real easy. So you know that they're going to make the negative team, right? The bad guy team. And yeah, what is a 3.05 plus a 2.05? Forget the negatives for a minute. Just add those numbers together. 5.1 actually. Be careful, the 1 would carry up, down, or over, whatever, however you guys say it. I don't do addition like that anymore.
What?
So if we stack these, right?
Wait, hold the phone. Are we doing?
Bro, why do you not have
Are we doing C?
We are on C.
Yes, we are on C.
Then
We are
where did you
first.
get -5.5.
Because we're doing that first.
Adding
Which we just talked about, but I don't think our ears were turned on. So remember, if I stack and add these, that 1's going to come over, or you can think 5 hundredths and 5 more hundredths make 10 hundredths. So now, good guy versus bad guy, who's stronger? Good guy. Now, guys, give me your eyes for a minute. A lot of you aren't doing this correctly. And a lot of you got progressings on your science paper because you're not working with positives and negatives correctly. A lot of you tried to take 2.82 away from 2.7 and you got some sort of like negative 5 point something like. We're trying to make your life easy, but it only works if you follow our processes. Okay? Here, my negative's not bigger than my positive, but the issue that you guys had was on your science paper, it said take the actual amount minus the measured amount, right? And then you divide by what you were figuring out percent deviation or percent error or something like that. You got a really weird answer. So Mr. Fabila came to me and he said, hey, we need to figure out why this is happening. So, I need your attention. So put down the calculator, give me your eyes. Regardless of what the numbers are, okay, if we have 1 positive and 1 negative, it doesn't matter who's bigger, but this is always the strategy you take. Okay, look at them and first determine what will the sign of my answer be. So my positive versus my negative, I know my positive is going to win, right? My positive number is bigger than my negative number is. Then, no matter what, do big minus small. No matter what. And you forget about the signs at that point. So when we do big minus small here, well, 6.1 minus 5.1, I just get 1. Because my positive guy wins by 1. So I want to show you another example. The thing that was on your science paper, I might be slightly off with what the numbers actually are. But write down, and do this with me, please, because a lot of you got this wrong. 2.70 minus 2.82, something like this. Now, a lot of you, I see some people not writing this down, and I bet you're the ones who got it wrong on your science paper. A lot of you did this. Do not write that down. But I'm going to show you what you did. I'm going to show you what you did. Because it took me a little while to figure this out, but then I actually did figure out what you guys did. And it was like kind of fascinating because figuring out mistakes is just as powerful as learning how to do it. So Pencils down, give me your eyes. Pencils down. This lesson's going to take longer than I planned, but it's fine. You all set this up thinking you're allowed to do this, but technically this cannot happen. Because we're going to end up negative, so I cannot stack my subtraction like this. So to begin with, I'm breaking a rule already. Okay, and my answer is going to be wrong. I need you all to understand what I'm doing is bad math right now.
Bad math.
So you guys said, well, I can't take 2 away from 0, I'll borrow. And then I got 8. And I can't take 8 away from 6, so I'll borrow. And then I got 16. And then I can't take 2 away from 1, and your brain gets upset about that, and you just tell yourself the difference is 1. Or you make up some other number, and you get this weird wrong answer, and then some of you made it negative, and some of you didn't. And either way, like, this can't happen. Because really, we're not very far away from each other, but one's positive and one's negative. Don't do subtraction. Right? Subtraction is a lie. Rewrite this to become 2.70 plus negative 2.82. Rewrite it. Now you can use your pencil. Now, addition, because it's easier. Adrian, you with me? Because you're making a great craft back there, but I'm worried that you're not with me. Who's going to win, the positive or the negative?
Positive. No, negative.
Negative's bigger, right? Not by a whole lot. Right? How much is the negative bigger by? 12. 12 hundredths, right? So if the first thing you think about is who's going to win, positive or negative, and you write down the negative, like you put that on your paper so you don't forget it, then no matter what the numbers are, you do big minus small. Doesn't matter who was positive and who was negative. My difference is 12 hundredths.
Wait, so basically, every time you subtract a negative by a positive, or big minus small, when you're doing this, whatever this is called, so you're basically just doing the difference?
Always. So if you have different signs, you keep the sign of the larger number, and you're always going to find the difference. Okay, even though we're adding, and like I'm taking a while to make sure this sinks in. We are adding, but we're adding opposite numbers, right? One's positive, one's negative. So they're immediately going to conflict and fight with each other. So we want to find out who is bigger and by how much. That's why we're doing the difference. It's how much bigger are you, how much stronger, how much more power, whatever you want to say. So with that reminder in your tool belt, with your group, do D, E, and F. Okay. I'm going to give you a few minutes to do these. Try to avoid any mistakes. If you get 2 different answers, you need to discuss as a group, like, wait, what did you do? Wait, what did you do? Figure out who is right and what the mistake might have been. Raise your hand if you need help. What's up?
I need help, but I didn't want to say. You can't even do 270 minus 282. That's for the bigger number on the top.
Yeah, exactly. That you can't do stacked subtraction with the type of numbers that we're working with.
The lower number on top.
Yeah. I know I wanted to incorporate that somewhere, because Kabila and I were talking about it last week, but it just so happened to be today. It wasn't exactly that.
Wait, you can't.
That was from their science paper that they had last week, the whole accuracy and precision. Oh, yeah. Guys, sorry. So to reference the exact assignment, that was from your accuracy and precision paper. So if you still are progressing on that and you need help, you might come see me. Like, I can help fix that mistake with you, because Kabila and I discussed that last week. But yeah, that number, the problem that we just did was not from today's lesson. It was from your science work. What's up? What are you looking for?
Oh my gosh, this is so.
I think it was 2.72 and 2.80, but what they were needing to do, yeah, because like it gave them all the numbers and it gave them the formula and it told them put this in for that, put this in for that. So that was the numerator above, because it's, what is it? It's actual minus measured divided by the actual, right? So they were getting first off, they were getting a negative, which really this should be absolute value, but he hasn't gotten to that point of like talking about absolute value. Doing it now, though, to say like they're a percent below or a percent above, like with the positive and the negative. Yeah. So, but they like, so all the kids are trying to stack subtract, and because immediately you can't do it, like you have to start borrowing, and but then it all falls apart because there's not enough to borrow. Like you can't actually borrow because there's debt. It's such an easier way to conceptually do it.
Mr. Hudson,
Yes.
I do not get this one little centimeter.
Well, at least you get centimeters. Okay. What don't we get about this?
Okay. I do not get this.
Why are you trying to subtract? Don't subtract. Subtraction's a lot. Subtraction's a lot. Do not try to subtract. So, Ava, this might be easier. It's not, we need to make a common denominator. So, if I do what you're trying to do, if you need help on D, you might give a little attention. I'm going to help Ava, but do it on the board. So, immediately, Ava, we can tell the positive is going to win, right? He's got more power than the negative number. But I'm going to turn this around to make my life easy, right? Because addition, I can move where the numbers are. 2 plus 3 is the same as 3 plus 2. So I'm going to make this 8.5 plus a negative 1 1/4.
But why are you doing negative?
Because it's a negative, and they're adding. So I didn't change anything. I just moved where this. So I just brought this over here instead of having it be the first thing. I don't like starting a problem with a negative. It's just like personal preference. Then, because we have mixed numbers, just between you and me, mixed numbers suck. Improper fractions are a lot better, and I don't like that we name them improper because it makes them sound bad, but improper fractions are far superior to mixed numbers. So we make these improper.
Okay.
So I don't know why I started calling it the triangle method, but you bring your 8 to your 2 and your 2 up, so it kind of like, if the numbers work together, it sort of makes a triangle. So 8 times 2 is 16, plus 1 more, 17 halves. Plus the negative 4 plus 1 more, 5. Are you with me to there? Because all I did was make improper. Like, yeah. Now we care about the common denominator.
Yeah.
So now I compare
Which is multiplied
my
by 2.
2 and my 4. Yeah, my 2 can become 4, so that's pretty easy. I can just over here double that and double this. So I get 34 over 4 plus negative 5/4. Now again, the reason we do this is to make your life easy. Now we don't have to work with the fractions actually. Because we know from our practice with this that the denominator just rides through the problem, right? Once it's the same, it just goes on through. So the only math we now have left to do is subtract the numerator. And you don't have to think in fractions. All you have to think is what's the difference between 34 and 5 because they're fighting, they're arguing, right? We have to like, it's 29. And because we know the positive wins, and like honestly, when I used to have to do these in school, I would off to the side put a little, like, if I knew the answer was going to be positive, to remind myself, I'd put a little thing off to the side. If I knew it was going to turn negative, to remind myself, I put a little negative off to the side. And then I make sure that my answer has that same sign as the note that I made for myself earlier.
Wait, but like what I don't get is like why are there negatives in this? Like what's the point of having negatives?
So negatives in the real world can mean a whole lot of things. It can mean that we lost money. It can mean that like we went back in time. It can mean a lot of things. Right up here, there's no practical situations. It's just giving you practice. So don't like try to relate this to the real world. Now if I told you like I went to the store with $15 and I bought whatever for 12, then we can really represent that situation realistically and say I started with 15 and then I bought, but because when I buy I have to give away my money. So I could say 12 or 15 minus 12, right? I could. We're allowed to do that. But we don't like subtraction. This makes more sense. I had this amount of money. Something happened, right? I made this happen. So it was like, and, if you're telling a story, like, and then I bought. But when I buy, I give away, I lose money. So then in the end, I have $3 left. Same thing as subtraction, just better when we're working with like decimals and fractions and everything.
Okay.
Subtraction makes things more complicated. Now that we've gotten up to bigger and more complicated numbers, subtraction is more complicated. Anyone want to walk me through E? Tell me what you did.
No.
E.
I didn't even
Okay, so first thing I got to rewrite it, right? So while I rewrite, you want to tell the class what we're going to do after we rewrite it?
We're going to add negative 13 plus maybe 0.6.
It's negative.
Negative.
Yeah, sorry, I put it in the parentheses. Forgot the negative. I kind of agree, but I kind of disagree. There's something else I should do before.
I thought you were adding the 10.
Oh no, I just wrote it.
Oh, no. Well, then you add 10.325 plus 14.14.
You're good. 1-4. So,
And then you would get
Ava, I'm going to keep picking on you because you've been honest and told me you're struggling with this, which is good. By the way, Ava's like the winner of the class right now because she had the courage to say, I don't get this, please help me. Join forces, positive and positive. Hey, you're not with your group, you don't need to talk to her. We join forces. Right.
Superman plus Batman.
Superman and Batman, you can argue over who's who. 14 plus 325, I can stick that off to the side of my paper and do the addition, or if I can do it in my head. 4, 6, 5, I believe.
Oh, yeah.
Still, sorry, is that correct? Now that we only have two numbers, who's going to win, the positive or the negative? The positive. Make a note somewhere, right? Reminders, make a note somewhere. I'm going to get a positive answer. Then do your work. Always big minus small. And I can do the stacked subtraction still, but it only works if you do big minus small. It does not work the other way around. 5, 6, borrow. Is that correct?
No.
It's 10.8.
It's 10.85.
What happened?
There's
a mistake somewhere. Anyone see it? Hold on, Aiden.
You took the one from before with the next. Oh wait.
No, you took the one.
Oh, you took the one from before which equals into a 3.
Be careful if you. Hey, I told you there was a mistake. Chill out. No one's getting candy. When you stack subtraction, I did this on purpose. You guys go fast. You've done this for a long time, and that's when you make mistakes. When I borrowed from my 4, it should have become a 3, but I accidentally, quote unquote accidentally, wrote a 1 there, which screwed up everything else. If your answer doesn't make sense, stop yourself and back up. So guys, what I'm trying to get you to buy into is Mr. Kabila is bringing me these science papers from you, and he's like, this doesn't make a lick of sense. Like, why do they think this is okay? I don't know. If you guys get numbers that do not make sense, stop yourself. It does not make sense to do 25 minus 13 and get 8. Like, I should have, like, obviously I made a mistake somewhere. So, that was still a 2 and does not get borrowed. 3 minus 3 is 0. 2 minus 1 is 10.865. Questions on that one?
Why don't you put the negative?
Because it's positive.
Well, not negative, but like, why don't you put the subtracting sign?
Because it's a positive number. This is over here. Yeah, sorry. Because I knew what I was doing. If I'm stacking numbers, I'm subtracting.
Okay, can I do F?
Yeah. Let me capture this.
Can I just tell you the answer?
No, that's not doing.
But I don't feel like doing all the math.
Hey, Aiden, can I give you lunch, but instead of giving you the food, I'm just going to tell you what you would have eaten?
Yeah, you can do that.
It's not the same, right? The process is what matters. Adrian, what do you want to do with that? You asked to just give me the answer. Do you have the process?
Wait, can I do it?
don't have the process.
Well, then you don't have it. Adrian, what do I do?
How'd you figure out that answer though?
Adrian, what do I do?
26
2/6, and then you add negative 12 1/2, which also equals 12 3/6, and then that will equal 13 5/6.
So wait, you did you put these guys together and then you went move forward from there. So that'll work. It's a little scary for me. Now you got I'm afraid to go down that road because we had 2/6 from the positive and 3/6 from the negative, so that's actually going to end up having to borrow out from one of the holes. So while that can work, that's a little bit more dangerous than the route that I want to take because I kind of play it safe sometimes. Laviva?
I haven't got all of it yet, but the first thing I'm gonna do is make them improper.
I agree, but there's actually a step before that even. Joey? Yeah, I mean, yeah. So guys, when you load up your Mario Battle or whatever you decide to play, I'm making stuff up.
I know you are.
We would like to be. Hey, Layla, I've barely seen your eyes all day. Makes me sad. We would like to be with our teammates. So that positive and that positive, I'm going to write those guys together when I write it down on my paper. So even if you've done this, please go ahead and write this down again because I'm going to show you a different way than potentially what you took. Now I've tried very hard this year to restructure how I teach things to help you further down the road.
Okay.
My best advice, regardless of what math you have to do, my best advice with mixed numbers, always make them improper.
Proper fraction.
Because mixed numbers are complicated. They are. I'm not going to lie to you and be like, oh, they're great. No, mixed numbers are complicated. Improper fractions are easier to do math with. So, now, some of you are like, well, I don't want to do that because these numbers are hard. Break the numbers apart. What's 20 times 3? 60. What's 6 times 3?
How do you do mental?
18. 18. Careful.
Nice.
60 and 18. 78. 79. Questions on how I got to my 79 thirds? Ready? You good back there? You good? You getting this written down? Or did you do it this way?
I did it this way.
I mean, allowed is not really. I mean, you are allowed to do whatever math works. So, but the problem is the mixed numbers might fall apart when I try to do some of the math. This 18, 19, 6. Almost made the mistake. 25 halves, right? Now, I agree with what everyone's been saying. I need common denominators, which my common denominator here can be 6. And over here at the same time, manipulate this fraction. Break up your numbers. What is double 70? 140. What is double 9? 18. Careful. 158. So 140 plus 18, 158.
Over 6. Oh my gosh.
Now, if you're real good, you could potentially add the two positives together in that same step. Or we just keep writing over here to get all of them into the form of denominator 6. Guys, I know there's some of you not doing this with me, and I'm letting you make that choice on your own because I know that you're probably the same people that I'm about to give progressions back to tomorrow. Yeah, the mastery assessment that I brought up first thing in class, you might not have been in here, but you can't respond with surprise when you miss the first few minutes. I'm giving back the mastery assessments tomorrow. I need to still put them in the grade book, and I may just go ahead and put them in math before I give them back to you. No. I have my personal grade book, and then I have math.
I have a personal grade book.
Right, which is how it normally works. You've already done the test. You've already gotten your grade. Then we go into the revision process. So guys, then, sorry, I was trying to give time to make sure everyone was here with us. We add the numerators that are on the same team, right? So good guys and good guys. Bad guy has no teammate. 158 plus 19. Hey, make your life easy. Do plus 20 and then come back by 1. So plus 20 would be 178. But then bump it down by 1 to 177. Yes.
So there's not always just going to be like a 19 or 18 or something like that.
I mean, sometimes you have to write it off to the side and actually like do the addition.
So could we like, let's say it's like 5, could we bump, no, let's say it's like 2, could we bump that up to like 10?
I mean, you could, if it makes your life easier. It's all about manipulating the numbers and remembering what you've done. So if I give it an extra 8 somewhere, like you were just saying, I got to take that 8 away somewhere else.
Okay.
So as long as you remember to do that. Who wins, the 177 or the 75? 177, obviously.
It's so easy.
And guys, right now, with where we are at the beginning of the year, quarter 1, you do not have to reduce fractions.
Yes.
You can if you want, but you do not have to.
Are we going to have to later on?
Yes. Yeah, quarter 2, we'll start doing more of that. In quarter 3, you will need to reduce all fractions. So, the biggest reason that I knew that we could take a long time for those problems right now, and it's important to make sure we're all comfortable with that, the only other real thing this lesson covers is the fact that when I go 3 steps this way, and then go 3 steps back that way, what happens? Yeah, nothing, essentially, right? Like, I traveled 3 and 3, but this is called, and I forget where it is, maybe it was on yesterday's lesson, like Friday. Did we talk about additive inverses? It's somewhere. So additive inverses, I only have 4 minutes. Additive inverses are just opposite numbers. Okay, so 5, negative 5, 8, negative 8, 17.2 and negative 17.2. If you have a positive and a negative of the same numbers, they're additive inverses, which we'll practice more as we go through the year, and we'll get familiar with that vocab word. But the only other thing that I need to teach you today,
I was just going to say, I found a way that seems a lot easier to solve that.
we don't have time. Sorry, see me after class if you want to or some point later. Absolute value. So everyone on your paper, please write down absolute value, and you can make a little note if you, so we're going to define this. So if you want to make a definition note.
Oh, I don't like attitude.
I don't like your attitude.
Ooh.
Thank you.
So the reason that I say that,
Just because I don't like definition.
absolute value, I have nicknamed the attitude adjuster.
Oh.
And I think we might be able to use this on Aiden.
Oh.
So what it means, why I call it the attitude adjuster.
Exactly.
I got too many classmates. Fine. Absolute value makes things positive. So the bars, the vertical bars, tell you that something is absolute value. So the absolute value of x will end up being the positive value of whatever x is. So if you had the absolute value of negative 8, that becomes positive 8. Because what absolute value is actually asking, and we'll define this again later to give you a better definition. Any guys? I know you're checking out because classmates are moving, but I got time. They dismissed early. What absolute value is asking is how far away from 0 are we? Which is always positive. Distance is always positive. Even if I am at negative 12, when it asks how far are we from 0, we are 12 away from 0. If I'm at positive 12 and I get asked how far am I from 0, I'm 12 away from 0. It doesn't matter what direction we have to travel. So hold up, just to give you a couple examples before you get out of here. That means, hey, did I say pack up? No. See me after class. You're packed up way too early. No, see me after class. Aiden Pearson, you, please, thank you. We do the math inside first. So we have to add the negative 20 and the negative 5.3. We get negative 25.3. We do the inside first. Then make it positive. So this becomes 25.3. Down here, you still do the math first. And absolutely, do the inside of it first. Then make your answer from the inside a positive number. It's all the time I got. We got to get out of here. So have a great day, guys. It just stays positive. If it already is positive, it is positive. Yeah, it just stays there. So 2 questions, but I need to stop the video. So I'm a percussionist, but do you think I'm hard of hearing?